Alright, time for another draft physics video presentation. Alright, so some troll comments. So we'll go back to some of the Stephen Bro experiments because it keeps being sold. Even Stephen is pretending his video is some sort of contribution to scientific knowledge. And it's so bad. It's so ludicrous that the argument really shouldn't have to go this low. And it just kind of proves how the bad physics happened in the first place, is that all integrity, all notion that you had to fight this fight on in a certain way, with a certain kind of integrity, was lost. After Newton died, apparently, the world turned into a silly place where silly people, propagandists and sideshow nonsense, ghosts and whatnot, any kind of theater. Science just became theater. It lost all of its integrity. It was all just for the show. How big a spark could you make? How big an elephant could you blow up? I mean, it's just turned into crap. And this is all part of an example of the crap that's pushing and leading and feeding perception, and the mind of man has turned into absolute crap, corrupt, stupid, moronic, weak, feeble, Simon Bar sinister kind of, just a little creepy, psychologies are telling us what the truth is. And it's a sad commentary. So anyway, to the troll, just to let him know, I did see your comment where you said the truth isn't slander. And I said, thank you very much, okay, because that's exactly how you're guilty of slander, is when you don't have any excuse for saying, well, I wasn't saying it was the truth. Yeah, see, now you can't say that, because that's exactly what you are saying. You're saying your made-up fables are the truth. All right, you're saying they're based on facts and you can defend them in court, and you can't. And so you've just demonstrated that when you do this talking off the top of your head nonsense, you're proposing it as the truth. And it's not the truth. They're just silly lies. Stephen Bro is a liar. I never told him I'd pay him a single dime for anything. I never arranged to pay him for anything. I never promised it. I never implied it. It's just a silly lie. And you reselling that lie is just demonstrating you don't have any evidence. Steve didn't give you any evidence. You have no right to do it. I mean, Steve is ultimately accountable for all the damage you do, but you're still accountable for your damage. You can't just use the excuse, well, somebody else told me so. That's not good enough either. Especially when you've overtly stated that you have the truth, that you're telling the truth. But you're not, and clearly not, because you have zero evidence. And I know that because I actually know my life. Okay, I know what happened in it. So I'm quite confident I can demonstrate your lies to be exactly that. Just made up stories you're telling, and then you're selling them as the truth. And that's a crime. And especially when we know your intent, and your intent is to do harm. That's your intent. So you've clearly proven it's all malicious, and so, thank you for at least doing that. Being so stupid to give me all the evidence I need to prosecute you. All right, thank you. Anyway, that's probably enough of a context for now. All right, DraftScience. I believe most, if not all, of the experiments from his video were experiments proposed by you in previous videos. Saying you believe it, and you have no evidence of it, is, again, going to be your problem. I mean, I've obviously made it clear in numerous videos since. I mean, it's 2 months now since Stephen, created this piece of shit video. And let's understand, Stephen promised, days after, that he had all this new evidence, that he did these rolling wheel experiments, and it all proves that I'm wrong. That's 2 months ago. Where are the experiments? I mean, it seems quite obvious he figured out, oh yeah, maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I didn't do it right, obviously. Anyway, so no, I didn't propose any banging shit into staples. I didn't propose any of this crap. I vaguely referenced the idea of using magnets and induction maybe as a way of measuring energy, but just almost as vaguely as I just did now. Okay, barely alluding to, well, maybe that'll work. Okay, but no statement about any kind of theory. What I mentioned was springs, and the spring experiment turned out exactly as I predicted. So let's just understand that. It's exactly as I predicted, in his video. So let's understand, his video doesn't demonstrate anything because it proves two different arguments. The experiments aren't conclusive. They aren't consistent. They get different results. That means it didn't prove anything. All right. So either way, it proves you don't know what you're talking about. So you're using this as an argument. So either way, I don't even know either way to what. If I propose the experiments, it proves it, and if I didn't propose it, no, that doesn't make any sense, retard. Okay, even if we accept the ridiculous premise that his experiments, which couldn't have been more straightforward, so it's just an insane statement. They're so unstraightforward. So I really hate to, I guess I'll just play some of the video again. I mean, there's nothing straightforward about anything. It's a mess of a video. Again, it just kind of, Madame Chartelet was a horrible scientist in that she was quote mining the evidence to sell an argument. That was bad, but she didn't do anything as bad as what Bro did, in the sense that at least her experiments had some clinical, they could fool you, but they had some clinical integrity. Even Ken Wheeler's experiments have some clinical integrity. I mean, he's not being accurate about what the ferrocell does, and his solar cell is he is overtly lying about the fact that he's not duplicating the light sources when he is, But anyway, okay. Even if we accept the ridiculous premise that this experiment, which couldn't have been more straightforward, somehow deeply flawed. Okay, yes, they are deeply flawed. They're just flawed in some mysterious way. Now, I've pointed out some of the ways they're flawed, and I'll do it again. Because look, you give 5 minutes of thought. I honestly, I haven't thought about his experiments for more than 30 minutes. That's it. 30 minutes of my life. And you just think about it for, off the top of your head, you're outside working on something, you think about, well, what the hell? And, oh yeah, and it occurs to you, oh, here's a flaw, here's a flaw, here's a flaw. So they're not all the mysterious ways. I've pointed out the ways in which, just as I pointed out how clay is flawed as a way of measuring energy. And again, if you people want to defend clay experiments, go ahead and make your defense. Let me hear you say it. Well, Stephen should use clay because that's the traditional way of fooling everybody. Yeah, that's the ferrocell way to do science. Use something that gives you a deceptive impression. Okay. In some mysterious way that can't be articulated by yourself. So, of course, I did articulate it, and I'll do some more of that. You're still wrong, so I don't even know what that means. So somehow I'm wrong even though I can prove he's wrong. Oh, yeah, okay. So that doesn't make any sense. I mean, just absolute nonsense. All right, so then it is stated, this isn't particularly important since his experiments did prove you wrong beyond all possible doubt. So let's understand, it's this bad. They're selling this, even Steve is selling it as if the most rigorous experiment he did, the one most consistent with science in the sense that springs are tested. Springs have been springs were invented in the 1500s. They've been tested for 400 years as reliable storage and measurement devices. They work in storing energy, and they work in telling you how much energy something has. They work. They're in scales for a reason, because they work. The people hold up the fish, because it works. So the one method of measuring weight, energy, pressure, that's reliable and dependable, and the fact is it's well tested, Is the experiment you're saying somehow everybody should just discount because Steven wrote the word Gary's cheat on top of it? No, not because I did anything. Not because I did anything to the experiment. He's saying that it's a cheat because springs suck, and somehow Gary's owns spring stock or something, and somehow making money off spring experiments. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So I mean, clearly it's just a clear fact that his video is inconclusive, in that the best experiment says I'm right, and all the other crap experiments he did indicate I'm wrong, to some extent. Some more than others, I guess you could argue. But all in superficial ways, because they're all so sloppy and so poorly done that it's hard to even tell. All right. All right, beyond all possible doubt, but why is it such a big deal to you to point out that you never agreed to pay him? Because you lunatics are saying I cheated him, or I was a fraud, or it's a terrible accusation to make about somebody, that they cheated somebody or they didn't pay somebody when they promised to. It's a terrible thing. You're saying you're making a very direct statement that I have committed a fraud, that I cheated somebody. That's a substantial statement, fuckhead. That's, fighting words. That tightens up a man's testicles, and he wants to punch somebody in the fucking face when they start making accusations that aren't true about him. So who the fuck do you think you are, you piece of shit? You lousy, trolly little scurvy worm. To make these accusations and then say I shouldn't defend myself against them? It shouldn't bother me. Fuck you, it should bother me. It should bother any human being to be lied about by these scurvy, dirty, filthy, stinking, whatever they are. This fucking idiot probably eats the bugs, off the hoo-hoos of his fucking welfare friends. Off their pubic biospheres. He's fucking disgusting pig. Anyway. Never agreed to pay him if his experiments did not prove you wrong. I'm not agreeing to pay somebody to prove something. I'm agreeing to pay somebody to do the experiment, not to come up with a result. Just to do the fucking experiment in a clinical, well-measured, well-scientifically disciplined way. That's what I will pay for. Where they actually film it with a camera, where they can actually, do a frame rate and actually see how fast things are going and all that kind of crap. See what's actually happening in the experiment. It has to be of enough quality to derive information, valuable, truthful, accurate information from. When it's not well enough done that you can get an accurate impression, then it's not worth anybody doing. Again, if I did experiments of the poor quality of Stevens, none of you would accept them. You would be mocking them. You would be sitting there and actually ripping me a new asshole for thinking I have a right to declare a truth based on such a terrible experiment. I mean, the experiments I've done, I did for my own information, for no one else's. I did publish them. I didn't publish them with some statement, well, here, this experiment is decisive. No. I just published them to say, this is my information. This is why I believe. Now, if Stephen wants to say his experiments demonstrate to him that he has reason to believe kinetic energy is real and all that horse shit, well, let him do that. But don't have him sell it that a reasonable person should have the same opinion. All right. I proved him wrong in the first place. The experiments did not prove you wrong in the first place. So I don't even understand. Again, the whole point of doing the experiment was not to prove anything right or wrong. It was to get a result, an experimental result. That's what I was offering, for somebody to do the experiment well. Okay, you pointed out in 2 separate paragraphs that you allegedly never agreed to pay him. I've said it in more than 4 videos or 5 videos now, or even more than that, because you people keep lying. There's absolutely no evidence I ever agreed to pay Stephen Bro anything. Do you think I would offer to pay him to make a fucking video of porn images? I mean, the whole video is a pile of shit. It's an attack against me personally. It's a stupid, idiotic video. Why the fuck do you think I would agree to pay somebody to make a piece of shit like that? I mean, it's such a preposterous lie you are selling that there was ever any notion that I had contracted with this moron to do anything except shove his own head up his own ass until dead. Ugh. Anyway. But you only used one. All right, two separate paragraphs that you allegedly never agreed to pay him. Yes, of course. So see, he says allegedly. So again, this is your lie, Stephen. Okay, you've implied to people that there's some doubt about this and that there's some reason to think there is a possibility that I agreed to pay you something when I never, ever, ever did that. And you know it, you scurvy, lying sack of little shit. Oh, disgusting people. All right, pointed out in two separate paragraphs. Okay, yes, that's right. But you only used one to point out that his experiment supposedly didn't prove your assertions. I couldn't even tell. The first time I watched the video, I didn't even know what was proven. It was so incomprehensible. I didn't even realize that the last experiment was complete proof that I was correct. It was so poorly presented. So I don't even understand what your argument is. The video is a steaming pile of shit. I don't know why I should spend any time on it. It's so bad. It's creepy just showing it. It's it's like watching one of those shows where they, catch the pedophile. The whole thing is fucking creepy. All right, if this is jeez, you people are just so fucking crazy. All right, pointed out that his experiment supposedly didn't disprove your assertions. Well, clearly they didn't disprove anything because first they can't because the experiments were so poorly done. Even if they all confirmed my view, they're really terrible experiments. Anyway, if this experiment didn't do what they were supposed to do, they did what Stephen Bro wants them to do because he's just like Ken Wheeler. He's just trying to propagandize science. He thinks I'm wrong. He doesn't think something else is right. He doesn't know enough physics to know what the right answer is. He doesn't know that kinetic energy is right. He didn't even admit he knows nothing of the theory. He knew nothing of the history. He knows nothing about the subject. He just knows he hates me. And that's his only motivation here. So this whole thing is disgusting. Okay, if his experiments didn't do what they were supposed to do, that is, prove you wrong. So again, that's what they were supposed to do? I would pay somebody to do that? Oh, make up really bad evidence? Create deception? To prove me wrong? Oh yeah, I'm sure I'm going to pay somebody to do that. Then what difference does it make whether you agreed to pay him? So he's saying, what difference does it make if somebody lies about you being an honorable person who pays your bills? What difference does it make? I can make these lies. So I can just, unfortunately these trolls don't have any names, so I can't ruin their reputation, right? I can't do anything to hurt them personally, in the sense that I can't just lie about their integrity, and I can't lie about, girlfriends they beat up, and I can't make up a bunch of fake and silly stories about what kind of integrity they have. Not that I would anyway, right? That I'd have to fight their fight. I'm not going to fight these. I'm not going to, throw shit and piss on the enemy. You people just have no integrity. You force other people to go as low as you want to go, keying cars and whatnot. I know. I'm not going to fight the war your way. Anyway, just disgusting. And again, these are the people on the side of right. Again, I would argue, AP Science's video, I think, has, 165 or something thumbs up and 0 thumbs down. That's a video against Ken Wheeler's people. Not even Ken Wheeler's people play your game. Not even they don't even feel the need to go key cars for their cause, for their icon, to protect the integrity of the Ken Wheeler. Okay, then what difference does it make whether you agreed to pay him? I mean, just amazing to have your theory disproven or not. Again, to have it disproven doesn't even make any sense. The idea is to create evidence that can be argued about. You claim, 300 years now, you've been claiming there's this stuff called kinetic energy, that somehow the universe runs on this stuff called kinetic energy. I'm arguing that Newton and Descartes and other reasonable scientists only saw momentum in the universe, and I only see that. That's all I see that anything has, is a certain amount of movement and a certain amount of mass. And that's all it has to function with, and it doesn't have any movement squared kind of energy. The volume doesn't get doubled or tripled or quadrupled because you increase the velocity. Velocity is only half of the equation, so to speak. So another comment was, Stephen already did the experiments that disprove everything you were saying. So absolute rubbish. All right, so we'll go to the experiments. I guess I'll do that first, and then we can just play some of it, because there's no point in having continuity issues. So it'd be better just to draw them. All right, so one that I've already mentioned briefly in recognizing the flaw in it. All right, so you want to test. I might as well do this thing here. All right, so so you have this fixed string. You go over 2 pulleys, okay, and then you put a weight on here. Now you could just put a spring here. You could do a lot of things here. You could put magnets. You could do different things to create tension. And so all you're really doing is just using this tension in the string to create a different activity. Now he put a weight on, okay, and so you're going to go up against gravity. And so the idea is the more you incur on the string, the higher you lift the weight. Now this experiment will work as long as whatever you're putting in can't cause a velocity that's greater than the weight, okay, the 9.8 meters per second force times the mass. So if you put a light mass on, it doesn't take much for you to now be past this, the 9.8 times the mass, the amount of momentum you give the object. So if you give it more momentum than 9.8 meters on the mass, that is more than what gravity is causing in terms of momentum, you create a velocity against gravity, and the object gets a free ride, so to speak. It goes further against the gravitational force because the velocity, the momentum, is higher than what gravity is pushing down with. So it's like running in the rain. You run fast enough through the rain, you can run a lot further distance before the same amount of rain hits you. So the faster you go, the less rain hits you. Same theory works here. So what happened was he put little plastic pieces on here that were very light, okay? And so when the fast object hit, what it did was it caused velocity against gravity that was, the momentum was greater than the momentum of the weight. So he used too light a weight. So it's just this jiggle argument. You can make something bounce if you give it too much speed too quickly. And so it just too much speed too quickly, it means that it goes up against the gravity and essentially getting a free ride. It's going a free amount of distance because it's going faster than the force that's coming down, raining on it. And so what happened was, in the case of the higher velocity object, it just caused the object, because it wasn't heavy enough. If he just made the objects heavier, it would have worked. But because he made it light, it popped, it jumped. It got velocity, escape velocity. It's going faster than the force of gravity, and therefore it's pushing, it's gained its own velocity against the gravity. So it bounces up and is traveling essentially for free against the force. So this one will go much further, okay? The faster ends up going a lot further than the slower object, because the slower object just keeps moving it at the same rate as gravity. So the gravity coming down is equal to the force moving it up. So it's never being liberated from the rain. So obviously it doesn't travel as far. So that's the flaw in that experiment. This one would have worked if this mass was heavier. Just a fact. Okay. I'll pause to erase that and move on to the next one. Alright, should be back. Alright, so we'll do I think this is springs into springs, but it was a different kind of, oh no, this was the lever. So we used a lever, okay, to presumably on a spring or something. Anyway, the lever goes this way at half the distance. Okay, so this one's going to be the 2x velocity. This will be the 1x velocity here. This object, this object. Alright, so this is a way of creating two different velocities, is to use this lever. Okay, pivot point here. And then thrown into springs to collect. Okay. So anyway, no real good technical information about how, and we didn't get to see any of this. Okay, so any construction of the lever was not in the video. And we certainly had no assurance about how the objects were going to move. The other problem, so the problem with this is he's using, okay, to do the experiment, he's using coins, okay, you know, stacked next to each other, you know, and then rolled in tape. So it's a, you know, an object, you know, like a tire, a car tire, okay, coins wrapped in tape. And so he takes twice as many coins and blah, blah, blah. So the idea is the thing has got to roll. Okay, and this is a problem because as you can find out from experiments with pendulums versus track. So if I take a pendulum that swings an arc and I make a track the same as the pendulum's arc, and I make a physical track, okay, that's the same as that arc. The thing is I'm going to, if I roll an object, you know, like a ball bearing, and I roll it back and forth, it's going to be 5/7, okay, the speed. It's going to change the speed. How long the period is will change by this percentage because you're really converting the energy. Part of the energy is now going to be in the form of the object rolling. So the part of the energy is being converted into the rotation of the coins. So the rotation of the coins is part of their momentum now. Their stored momentum is part in that form. So it doesn't get realized as velocity of the coin. So the coin moves physically slower the more it's rolling. All right, so this is sort of why they invented anti-lock brakes, is because skidding, okay, will get you further, faster, okay, than if you're force your wheels to keep rolling, keep turning. Okay, so the fact is this will slow you down more if you turn the brake on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and keep the wheel rolling. You'll cause more usable friction that'll slow you down more because you're converting more of the energy of the road into rotation of the tires, and that's helping to slow you down. It's when you've lost the rotation element, then you got rid of that 5/7 thing, and you're just relying on escaping the friction by going fast enough to, you know, create oil, you know, like hydroplaning. You're evading the friction by using velocity. The faster your velocity, the less effective the friction is, just like the less effective gravity is. That's the real physics. Okay, so the problem with this experiment is the slower object is more likely to roll, and the faster object is more likely to skid. So that's why the results came out the way they did, is because this object didn't roll into the spring, it just skidded into the spring, where this object converted the momentum into rotational, angular momentum, besides creating the forward motion. So this one moved slower, which means its momentum in the form of its motion in a direction was less, and part of its momentum was in its actual rotation, which the spring can't collect. The spring can't collect its rotational motion. It can only collect the part that is in the direction it's moving. So it's only going to get the directional part, the 5/7 part. It's not going to get, okay, the rotational energy. That's just going to turn into friction when it hits the plunger. So when it hits the plunger, it's just going to roll into the plunger and create friction on the plunger, but it's not going to create direction this way. It's going to create energy this way, which will just be heat. So the rolling object loses some of its momentum. So that's a clearly plausible explanation for the not even conclusive result. Okay, we didn't see any empirical proven evidence that this spring was twice as compressed as this spring. That we didn't see anyway. And it's probably a lot more consistent with 5/7. Okay, so on to the next one. Alright, back again. Alright, so I think another one, I know another one was some kind of coil. So he had some kind of coil, like a solenoid, I would imagine, some sort of solenoid type device. And so he's going to push the two objects, launched again with the lever, I believe, into the solenoid and then measure the electricity, okay, that comes off of the two objects. Now, the problem here is the faster you go, right, the faster something's moving into the coil, the faster the more energy it puts into the coil sooner, okay? So it can go a very short distance, and then the energy is absorbed by the opposite reaction of the coil, you know, in terms of it creating a force, opposing force. Now, it's not an opposing force, it's just the consequence of your doing work. You're pushing electrons, and it takes energy to push the electrons. Okay, you're going to get the reflection back. But anyway, so that part doesn't really matter. But there is resistance. As you push, there's a resistance force. And the faster you go, the whole event takes much less time. You push a lot of energy all at once. Where in the case of something moving slower, the amount of energy you're dissipating off is much less. So you need to travel a much longer distance. So if your coil isn't long enough and you're going slow, you can't collect the energy. So if the coil is only a few windings, the slow thing will go through the windings, and it could keep traveling because it's not even being slowed down. So it's going to bang into the wall, okay, bounce in there even. So with the fast object, all the energy will be pulled out. The resistive force will stop it from moving. But in the slow-moving object, it'll go right through the coil because only a tiny percentage of its momentum will be pulled off because it's moving slowly. It's moving very few electrons. It's getting very little force back, so there's very little resistance to its motion. So it essentially needs a much longer wire, okay, to turn all of its energy into heat. So the lower the voltage, the longer the wire has to be to dissipate all the voltage into heat. The higher the voltage, the shorter the wire has to be to turn it all into heat, is another metaphor. So that's probably the failure of this experiment he didn't have a long enough coil to collect all of the energy from the slow-moving object. You need a very long wire to create enough resistance to take care of the slower voltage, and that's just a fact. All right. So, yeah, that's probably enough on that one. I'll just say, we got no information on that experiment. He just sets up a couple of meters, has a couple of things, but there's no information about how many windings are in the coil, what the coil's made of, how long the coils are, what stops the object from hitting the back of the coil. Does the object fly right through the coil? Did this object fly right through? Did this object go right through? Did it have extra momentum still? Obviously, you didn't collect all of its momentum if it's still traveling after it goes through the coil, right? If it's still traveling after it goes through the coil, you obviously didn't collect its momentum. Can't still have it by my theory anyway. And give it. You can't give it away and still have it. Okay, that's not how energy works. I shouldn't have to explain that to smart people. I mean, people that graduate high school, I shouldn't have to explain it to. I guess I should also point out that the rolling versus skidding thing is a problem for all these experiments. So, you know, they're all suspect for that reason alone. Because you haven't guaranteed that they're both rolling. Anyway, That's why they use air tracks. That's why they use better ways to eliminate the friction, because you get better answers that way. All right, so the other experiment was, we're not to the clay yet, are we? I guess, no, I mean, the springs, the staples. Okay, so he uses a row of staples. Okay, so staples glued to each other kind of thing. So, and then the experiment was to crash it into the staples and cause them to bend. So the staples would bend. I guess I should draw it that way. Okay. Based on the energy that goes in. Now, I could argue that this is like wood or anything else. It's not very reliable in terms of how much the wood yields to energy. So obviously, we all know from the karate people, you know, that if you hit the energy quickly in very, very small location, you can fracture the wood into two different pieces. Okay, and it's a dramatic effect. And that if I apply hours worth of pressure, so on the wood, hours and hours and hours of an insufficient velocity, I can, you know, use hundreds and millions of gallons of gasoline to put pressure on a piece of wood and I never break it. You know, so there's obviously flaws in this as a method of collecting energy. First, it's not a storage device. It's much like the clay. One would suspect that the glue and the adhesion all is affected by speed. The faster you go, the more likely it is you'll break the glue, break the bonds. And the slower the pressure, the more spread out the pressure, the more time the pressure has to move through the object at a slower speed, the more it's capable of dissipating the pressure and not yielding, not breaking the bonds. So that's just about chemistry. That's the way chemistry works. You have to have a certain amount of heat to break chemical bonds. Okay, you can't break two atoms to pieces unless, oh yeah, it's got to be, for this chemical, it's 136 degrees Fahrenheit or whatever. Or else it doesn't work. It won't happen. They won't separate. So this is a chemistry experiment in some respects. And so it can be understood much like clay. Clay does the same thing in the sense that the faster the object goes in, the more the clay, okay, just keeps the energy going in this direction, because the energy doesn't dissipate this way very readily. Where if I use cornstarch, exactly the opposite happens. All the energy ends up turning the substance into a solid. The chemistry changes, okay, with velocity. It solidifies it, and that means the energy is transmitted in all these other directions through all the other molecules in the substance. And so there's very little penetration because the energy is getting sent in these directions rather than in the direction of the motion, where the clay bits are all moving this way. The higher the velocity, the more likely the clay bits move in a forward direction, which means they're all working for you. They're all keeping your momentum plowing. They're all snow plows you're giving your gasoline to, and the snow plows that you're giving your gasoline to are plowing ahead of you, which means you have a much easier path to fly through, because the stuff you gave your momentum to is actually still going in the same direction you're going. And the slow object, this stuff starts to happen, and more of your energy goes in directions plowing snow that you're not going to be plowing, roads you're not going to be traveling. So if they plow a road you're not traveling, you gain no benefit. So clay can be understood why fast things penetrate deeper. It can also be understood why staples would be affected differently based on velocity. That the faster the velocity, the more the staples yield to the velocity. The slower the velocity, the less the staples yield. Not very challenging science to understand. These are important physical features of the experiments, and if you don't refuse to understand them, it's just like refusing to understand the ferrocell is just little pieces of iron oxide, and they're just doing what iron filings would do if they were free to go exactly where they wanted to go. Alright, I'll think if there's anything else. Alright, well, before I go to the video and just play a little bit of it, just to show, you know, just how bad it is as a scientific argument. Anyway, so this R character, before I whatever. This, Farley, the psychotic troll. Who else here suspects Gary obsession with Newton might hint at xenophobia? Well, first off, xenophobia isn't a crime. I mean, to be, uncomfortable with people speaking languages you don't understand and having habits, really stupid habits, doing really dumb things. Okay, they're just irritating. Like, there's a neighbor here who blows his grass into the street. And he also blows all the rocks and stones off of his driveway into the street. So now every time a car goes by, a bunch of pebbles are flying all over the place. So not only does the cruddy grass blow all the way up the street, all the way down the street, it clogs the sewers. It's just stupid. And it's because he wasn't raised here. He was raised in some place where, maybe they took a shit in the street. Maybe that's what they do. Everything, all the shit, the garbage just goes in the street. Maybe that's where he grew up. But it doesn't work here. And so, yeah, I'm phobic to people who don't function well because they have no continuity with the civilization they're existing in. They, were raised one kind of animal and now they're trying to live with a bunch of other kind of animals. I think that's retarded. I think it's like idiotic for ducks to raise platypuses, so to speak, They have some things in common, but not enough things in common. Okay, the platypus ain't gonna fly no matter how hard he tries. He can flap his little pebble, his little fins all he wants. It's not going anywhere. Fins, his paws. Fuck you people. This is just such bullshit. So first off, I don't really, just like being a narcissist, I don't think, taking the word seriously in the sense that, what's an exaggerated self-impression. But it's almost like, again, competing with these kind of arguments, how could I be anything other than a narcissist about how well I'm functioning? Because I clearly don't have to resort to these silly and stupid and pathetic arguments. Ugh. Anyway. So, on to the Steven video. Alright, so here we are. So it's a couple of months now, March 8th. It's more than 2 months. Right? Yeah, we're in May. Past. So he's gotten 2,200 views. He's gotten like 4 subscribers from the videos. Yeah, he still only has 57 subscribers. So clearly not too many people impressed that this guy's a source of really great info. I haven't seen any comments by any scientists. Okay, I don't think AB Science would approve of this as a piece of evidence, as a contribution to science. So they're all just trolls of mine who show up here to applaud just really poor behavior. So this is just demonstrating that these people who are defending conventional physics, they really do hate science. Okay, it's not what they're defending. They're defending a theory and propaganda, a story they want to believe. It has nothing to do with the truth. Again, Steven admits he knows nothing about this subject. He's done no research. He understands nothing about speed and momentum. So, just so bad. So, just to prove just the low integrity of Steve, just how pitiful a character it is. So, we have this just overtly idiotic, exaggerated, silly statement. You absolute legend. So, this is a legendary video. He's got 56 subscribers. Even if he got them all from this one video, there's 2,200 views on the video. Just do the math. The real math is he got 10 subscribers. He had like 45 before he did this video. So he got 10 subscribers for this piece of steaming shit. Alright, thank you so much. I really appreciate this video. And what's to be appreciated about? It's so retarded. He's making a defense against the accusation. I called it girly physics because I just sort of pointed out how, unfortunately, it's a famous woman who is the one most responsible for this stupid MV squared existing as a theory. It wouldn't exist as a theory without her, frankly. and the propagandizing she did with her big pile of money. Okay, so it's just something sold to science by money. All right, I tried to explain that Gary can just do the experiment. So again, we're saying you can just do the experiment. The whole point is that you can't just do the experiment. You have to do experiments right. That's why people use air tracks. That's why people use kind of expensive hardware. You can't just do a single photon experiment. You can't just do it in some shit manner and then say, I did good science. That's not good science. I mean, it's so bad that you could, you could apply this to. Would you want this guy doing your, virus creating, antiviruses, your cures for cancer? You want this guy to be working on it? Oh, but he refuses. Great video. So again, just a silly comment. I refuse to what? Do an experiment that I'm not capable of doing correctly. Oh, yeah, what a silly refusal of mine. Shit. I don't have an air track. Anyway, well, I won't even bother. But the very fact that, oh, thank you so much. Yeah. It's just pathetic. I mean, it's a pathetic exaggeration. A pathetic, just the lack of humility here. But and then he goes a step further and he reposts this argument. So you're a little slow, aren't you? So he's saying to this comment, to the supporters of kinetic energy, answer the fucking question. So where has somebody answered the question, Stephen? You haven't answered them in any kind of rational way. Certainly Piro's answer wasn't rational. I mean, there was no detailing of, he just makes the claim. Well, the faster one leaves 1.4, not 2 times as fast. Do we have a single experiment showing that? No. So he says, do the damn experiments and show the evidence. Back it up. Do the honorable thing. So Stephen thinks this is doing the experiment. And again, he did the experiment my way, and it came out 100% as I predicted. So what is, again, the fact that you people don't even get that just shows how you're really not in this for the truth. So anyway, so this is his great feminist argument. So his proof that de Charlotte, Madame, wasn't a shitty scientist is to show women doing this. Okay, so women doing this shows how women are emancipated. And that they're a credible scientist. Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant argument. Well made. All right, so I think we'll jump to the end first.
Tests the red object is half the mass, twice the velocity.
Okay, so all this crap. Imagine somebody actually doing an experiment this way, where they superimposed another image on top of the experiment, right? Just porn images or some shit. What? Who does this? Who does something this stupid? All right, so this is the experiment with 2 springs. It's rolling the 2 objects. The red one is it's half the mass of the white one. So the white one has more quarters in it. The red one has fake quarters, so to speak, something like that. They actually don't look the same size, which is, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter so you can see the distances are tiny here. So we're not going to be able to see whether the objects are actually rolling or whether they're sliding. So the argument is that it's at least 5/7 difference. So you have some significant difference, whether it skids into the plunger or whether it's actually rolling into it. All right, the spring will not collect the rolling energy. So anything that's rolling won't be collected by the spring. All that energy won't be seen. That part of the momentum won't be realized as a result. The spring won't be able to convert the roll into motion in the proper direction. All right. So let's play a little bit of it. So all of this broken bullshit. Yes, who doesn't believe you have any evidence of kinetic energy? So that was supposed to prove it to somebody. So again, we have you can't even see the mechanisms he's using to push. So we don't even know if these are the right locations on the lever for half the energy. We have no idea. Nothing's shown. There's no evidence of anything. We don't see these things having the same velocity, and it's such a bad quality video that you can't even slow it down to see, because there's not enough frames of actual experiment to be able to see what the velocities were. All right, so too stupid, blah blah blah. Then just all this crap. Again, I would pay somebody to do all this nonsense in between. Oh, YouTube won't play the video. YouTube is really... What I have to do is put this in a private window, and then it'll actually work. So, I mean, clearly YouTube is discriminating against people even watching videos now. You can't even watch videos if YouTube knows who you are. It won't play the fucking video. I mean, it's really that, it's gotten that fucking bad. Yeah, it's just sad. Alright. So, play the video, thank you. Well, that's not working either. Well, so much for that theory, right? Okay. It usually works. It usually works. If I go to a private window, it plays the video. So, this is just, YouTube is just so brilliant, right? I mean, alright, I'll have to pause, see if I can get one of them to play. Alright, well, I downloaded it, so this should work.
In all the following tests, the red object is half the mass, twice the velocity.
And again, so he says half the velocity, but his whole theory is dependent on Piro's theory anyway, is that it's only 1.4 the velocity. So he can't even get that part of the argument right, that he's arguing that kinetic energy means that the lever doesn't produce twice the velocity here. That it only produces 1.4. Or it's only 0.6 over the other side or something. Somehow the two objects don't have any consistent momentum. Momentum isn't conserved is the whole theory. For kinetic energy to be correct, you have to basically say momentum isn't. Momentum isn't conserved.
You're about to meet a guy called Gary who doesn't believe in kinetic energy and calls it girly physics.
So this is how he counter-argues the accusation that it was a girl and that it was kind of just girly in the sense that it was a girl who was kind of a crystal rubber, fooled by glitter, who wanted the universe to be, sparkly. Free willy. Girl intentions have been rubbed onto the physics, sadly. But his counter argument about how girls are really great scientists is to show us girls made up to, entertain men. That's how he shows how women are vital, intelligent beings, playing the real life game. Not a very credible argument. He said, he's certainly not showing how he's some kind of feminist. Clearly doesn't think, women, are up to it.
Remark against Emile du Châtelet, who gave the world so much.
Alright, so who gave the world so much? Clay experiments done by somebody else. She didn't give the world anything. She translated Newton into French. Not exactly a spectacular task. I mean, and nothing to, but she didn't do any science of her own. I mean, it's just a fact. So if you want to show me her good theory, her good science, show it to me. But it doesn't exist. Her free will theory. You want to explain to me how she's right that there's free will? So all this crap. So he says this is in honor of girly physics, and he's playing whatever crap music and like all these whatever kissy face women images in the video. I mean, soft porn kind of crap, really. What? And this is something I have to counter argue. I have to counter argue this great science performed by this lunatic. Single experiment done in the history of mankind.
I've got loads. Why haven't you?
Say he's got loads of experiments. Yeah, and none of them have any credibility. None of them can survive any kind of disciplined, rational, scientific scrutiny as being good experiments. Just like the clay experiments of Miss Châtelet. They're not good experiments. They're quote mined out of the whole field of experiments. The whole universe is screaming momentum, 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 and you perverts are just saying that's all I want to look at is the, kinetic energy crotch. Demonstrate that a 10-ton train
Represented by this roll of 8 coins.
going 5 miles an hour has half as much capacity to create energy as a 5-ton train
Represented by this roll of 4 coins.
going 10 miles an hour. You don't have a single analogous experiment.
I have. Why haven't you?
See, so he says he has it, okay, and he doesn't. The most conclusive experiment, the one that's the simplest and the most easily to observe, the one with the springs, the one I suggested, demonstrates clearly, okay, the exact opposite of what he's saying. It clearly shows the paradox. All right. So let's play that. So he waits till the end of the video. Well, I mean, the other experiments are in here. I can't, preview them.
Each one of these carries a very obvious difference between that and that. They're like a solid block of steel. Okay, same experiment again, but
Okay, so this is the stupid rows of staples. So
through
again,
the shape of the red one to make sure that they really are identical, apart from the red one being half the mass of the white one. Which one did the most work? Quite clearly, that one did the most work.
so this is exactly the problem. So clearly the clay experiments from 1730, 1725 or whatever, fooled a lot of people because, they didn't understand. They didn't go through the process and think about what clay does. But clearly it has a bias for velocity. So the more velocity, the faster something moves into clay, the further it goes. It's a fact of clay. And the same argument can be made here. Staples aren't some sort of scientific reliable way of measuring energy. So again, we're just back to, it didn't break the board, therefore it had less energy because it didn't break it. Didn't snap it.
Well, the results couldn't be clearer, really, could they?
All right, so it's for him clearly. It couldn't be clearer. This all you need is evidence, is to quote mine evidence. All right, with whatever this is on top of it. I mean, it's just so stupid. Again, having to even argue something this fucking disgustingly stupid.
Extra energy that Gary talked of to carry on ploughing through and lifting the horse up. No, it gave up the fucking ghost, didn't it? It didn't have enough energy.
Okay, so it's all this rhetoric. This is the stupid one where he lifted the plastic pieces, the pieces that weighed much less than the objects that are rolling into the string. So therefore they gained velocity against gravity. The faster you go, the more free travel time you get. That's just a fact of gravity.
Like that radar one saying, get a direction antenna and point it at just one of the transmitter horns, ignore the other one, and the pattern will go away. Oh, will it? Let's have a look.
By just using directional antennas. Oh, okay, so I didn't realize that this one was in here. So this is having a look. This is where so he's not even doing the experiment I suggested. Okay, clearly, because you wouldn't do it on this small an arc. You're at one location, and so instead, I don't want to. All right, I'll draw it real quick. So but this is just how bad he is. He did it exactly backwards. Exactly backwards, because he's so stupid. All right, so. We're back at the radar experiment. So this isn't even on the subject. So let's understand, he can't even stay on one subject in the video. He's such an important video producer. He can't make a separate movie for a separate story. So the argument is you have two sources of photons, okay, radio, and it doesn't really matter what the frequency is. It's just radio. Whether it's radar, microwaves, it doesn't really matter. And the point is you send the two signals, and they're supposedly supposed to interfere with each other in space, and then make the pattern of on and no signal, off. Okay. And then back on again, and then off. All right. Now, the simple point is if you took one of these off spots and used a directional antenna and pointed it at the source, okay, or pointed it at this source, you'll still receive 100% of that source's energy. Okay, so that's the experiment. Instead, he's moving this way. No, wrong experiment, dumbass.
Well, it looks like the pattern's still there.
No, so wrong again. Okay, too fucking stupid. He couldn't do the experiments right when he was doing them, when I was talking to Steve, when he was supposed to be helping, okay, clarify things. And so he, bought all this equipment to do this shit, and he wouldn't do it the way I suggested. and so the experiments that need to get done never got done because he wanted to do it his way, and his way is stupid. Clearly.
You're stupid. You're lazy. You're stupid. You're lazy. You're lazy. You're lazy.
Okay, so this is more evidence that he's not stupid and lazy, in the sense he spent more time editing this fucking piece of shit clip. Okay, so he spent more time doing this editing of this bullshit than he spent on the actual experiment.
That's halfway to the
Okay.
twice the speed, twice the velocity.
So here's where he writes Gary's cheat. So now he actually has a ruler, he has a spring, has a reliable spring, a really good way of measuring the two different outcomes. All right, and what does he call it? He calls it Gary's cheat. So even though it's using the reliable method of spring, you still have the roll problem, but regardless, we have the same spring that's launching them, so we can be assured that it's the same energy that they're both receiving, which helps overcome some of the problems.
Of this double mass. And it isn't. It's barely accelerating this any faster. This demonstration shows it's easy to cheat the experiments, and hey presto, he's got your $4,000. There's a good...
Okay, there's no $4,000 he's cheated something. This is all just whatever this Weasley horse shit is. What's the cheat here? Again, it's the same spring shooting the object into another spring. Exactly how is this cheating?
The reason he's trying to get you all to bet as much money as possible.
Oh, yes, yeah, exactly. The reason why I'm saying if you think your physics has some integrity, why wouldn't you invest in it? If you think it's the truth and it won't be proven wrong, if it's so reliable and so proven, why wouldn't you go with a sure thing? I mean, this is a horse running against turtles, supposedly. I'm supposed to be as dumb as a flat earther. I mean, this is supposed to be a no way you could possibly be wronger. And yet not one of you put up $10. I mean, doesn't that just prove you don't have any confidence that you're right? Because the evidence does suck. You don't have any.
Make him rich. Because he's a scam.
All right, so exactly. And what did I say I wanted to do with the money? Pay somebody to do the experiment. So again, just more horse shit. The whole point of doing the let's do this bet to raise the money. I would like you to pay for the experiment, frankly, instead of me paying for it. So let's have a wager on the outcome of the experiment. And guess what? The losers will end up paying. Because you're going to be the losers, and I'm going to collect your money. That's the way it's going to work out. Because I am right and you are full of shit. And it's obvious how full of shit you are.
He's a lousy cheating scoundrel.
Right, so I am a cheating scoundrel somehow. Somehow he has a piece of evidence that demonstrates I've ever cheated anyone ever. I mean, this lying sack of dirty, filthy shit.
The other experiments do show that the half mv squared thing works.
Okay, so we never even got anywhere close to having an accurate reading, so we don't get the half thing. We don't know it's twice as much. None of that was at all clear. The fact that, yes, it's more, okay, but is it twice as much? No, that wasn't proven.
It's perfectly fine. It's only this experiment, the very one that Gary happens to be proposing, that he's obviously tested at home before.
So he says I had to test it at home. I didn't have to test anything at home. I mean, I obviously have no reason to believe in kinetic energy. It has a horrible history, and there's no physical evidence. And I know simple things like the bullet coming out of the gun doesn't have 2,000 joules of energy, and the gun only has 3 joules of energy. I know that's not true. I know the bullet's not 1,000 times more capacity to move stuff in the universe. So of course I already know this stuff. So yes, of course I know what the outcome's going to be, because I know momentum's the right answer. Newton knew what the right answer would be. Newton would make the same predictions, you idiot. Fuck, you're so stupid.
So you guys go on, put up as much money as you dare, because it's a cheat.
All right, so again, he's calling it a cheat. It couldn't be more simple, right? You're just launching an object with a known force. You're collecting it with a reliable spring. Where's the cheat? Incredible.
If the light one isn't going very much faster than the heavy one.
The light one isn't going very much faster. Well, so I can just go back to the beginning of his video. Remember in the beginning of the video where he said, well, the red one is half the mass and twice the velocity. Should I play it again? Well, yeah, let's just go ahead and play it again, for fuck's sake.
In all the following tests, the red object is half the mass, twice the velocity.
Yeah, there we go. Twice the velocity. So in his own video, he contradicts his own statements. Okay, it's not, he's saying in the spring experiment, it's not twice the velocity. Obviously, it's not twice the velocity. Why wouldn't it be twice the velocity? It's half the mass. It's going to be twice the velocity. You have to conserve the momentum of the spring. Professor Lewin would tell you that. The momentum of the spring can't be fucked with. So how can you have it both ways? And how can you defend this overt contradiction? You overtly contradicted yourself in the video, and you're saying you're doing good science. I mean, it's an overt contradiction. You can't get any clearer. It's half the mass, twice all these experiments, it's half the mass and twice the velocity. Well, except the experiment I'm saying is wrong, because that one's obviously can't be twice the velocity. This is just too stupid. Oh, fuck. How could I be abandoned on this retarded planet? So enough, right? It's enough. I mean, I'll just show you the actual experiment. So he couldn't hide from the actual experiment results, but he again put Gary's cheat over it, where there's no cheating, and clearly the white object moves the spring just as far as the red object. So right up to this little mark here, and then the red one would be right up to this little mark here. Yep, same place. Okay, Gary was right. So he calls it Gary's cheat. Again, the experiment actually has a ruler in it. You can actually see it. It's actually filmed a little bit better. And he calls that experiment cheating. So fuck. What can you do? I mean, you can't do anything with liars this grotesque, This is just so foul. All right, so enough of the video. It's just too stupid. So till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot, I will endeavor to persevere, but requires quite a bit of momentum to do so. I have to keep, gotta eat my carrots and such.